Yes. Hello to everyone as always.
Oh, you got Connie just stepped on.
And I'm pretty certain that this is my dear friend Connie. And oh yeah, there's been a certain amount of serendipity for me this week. And as I was saying, it's the good part of the internet where you meet people again. Well, we just started recording, but I was talking before we started recording. My friend Carol, who shows up as CJ on the screen, hadn't hadn't been in contact with her for something like 72 years. And wow, what a pleasure. And as my life goes on, it becomes more and more special to me, the relationships I have with people. And I just feel more and more that the relationships I have with people is the most important thing I have in life, or relationships, so I could say the most important things I have in life. And so, for instance, I have a daughter she's either 30 or 31, I'm not sure. She lives in Los Angeles now. She grew up in Japan. And every once in a while, she sends me a message online and says, why don't we get together and talk? And the next day or two, we haven't spoken in a while. And it's very special to me to have a daughter who's now very definitely at 30 years old, an adult, and she enjoys talking to her father. Her and I have always gotten along well. And that's my relationships. Again, I'm just saying my relationships are really what's important to me in this stage of my life. And I'm making that clear also because today the email said successfully navigating your important relationships. And interestingly enough, life being life, the person that I'm feeling suggested this topic today isn't here today for some reason. And he's been showing up every week for several months now. But anyway, I made this topic today to serve him in particular, but it'll serve everybody else too. And anyway, somehow he didn't show up. So I wrote in the email that I sent that over the years we've discovered that people focus on the wrong prize when wanting to achieve specific results in delegate relationships. And let me stop a second and say my voice changes from time to time these days. I'm I haven't had cancer for 4 years, but some days my voice is better than others. I'm fully recovered from the cancer, and thank goodness for that. But I'm hoarser today than I am at other times. So I just bring that up, and sometimes I do a fair amount of coughing. When I'm in public, I say, by the way, I don't have a cold or anything. I'm just coughing from reaction to the operation I had on my neck. So, So people often focus on what I want rather than gently exploring what their counterpart finds emotionally important. Emotionally important. And, I lived in Japan for 30 years, and now I've been in Thailand. Boy, I was going to say Nepal. I've been in Thailand for 10 years at least. And you often have to directly ask someone what their opinion is on something. Otherwise, they're very purposely not making that clear. Because anyway, who am I to put my opinion out into the world? I think is a feeling that they have, and they want to be certain that they're not going to say something that you somehow disagree with or don't believe in. So I often wonder when it comes to things like the United Nations, and anyway, when different diplomats go to another country to talk to their president or prime minister and such, I'm guessing most of these diplomats have not had enough good training in how to talk to people that come from rather different cultures. And and even two New Yorkers like Carol and I, maybe, you know, she's a woman, I'm a man, and this and that, and so forth and so on. It might certainly be that we don't have as much as a shared belief system, maybe, but we can discover it over time. And it's so important to be respectful of the other person. So, what I say in my email is that if you're in a challenging situation with someone, or you need to have a conversation that you're not particularly looking forward to, but you know that you should because this is an important relationship, I'm just suggesting that it might be good to say something like, let's say it's Joseph. Joseph, I'd like to begin by asking you for your help in understanding what's most important to you in this conversation that we had the last time we were together. To me, I think the most important part is I'd like to begin by asking for your help in understanding you. Very different than, Connie, I really want to talk to you about what we were talking about last week because I'm not sure we're on the same page with that. Woof. What a different statement to make to someone. And that person is going to feel very different depending on which statement you make. And that person, depending on their history and your history with them, and if they're feeling a little bit pushed by you, you're most likely going to have a very different conversation than if they feel that you're actually asking them for help. And keeping this larger frame, what in Seishindo we believe it gives you the opportunity to bring wisdom into the conversation. So the two quotes I have in the email says, both from Gregory Bateson, who was a genius in many ways. Gregory Bateson said, wisdom comes from sitting together and truthfully discussing our differences without the intent of changing them, without the intent of changing our differences. So Sherry, I think it's kind of a shame that, I'm just making this up, by the way, that you're a Republican, because I would have hoped that it was obvious that Democrats you know, are better for the country, blah, 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 blah. And then Sherry and I start having a conversation. Ooh, she might feel like I started off by throwing her into a hole. And the second and last quote for now, for Gregory Bateson, says that wisdom wisdom is the intelligence of the system as a whole. So when we're having a difficult time with someone, or a challenging time, or a delicate time, however you might like to name it, most people, most of the time, are attempting to find themselves right, and or convince this other person I like her, but boy, she's been a little problematic lately. This person that has a different point of view than me. And I'm wondering, Juan, tell me please, the name of your lady here.
Yes, this is Allison.
Allison, good. I forgot before. Hi, Allison.
Nice
Welcome.
to meet you, Charlie.
Thank you. So, when working with couples, do you find that one or the other person in the relationship is often trying to prove themselves right compared to the other person, or not? How does that happen?
I've never seen that ever, Charlie.
No, I was guessing you had,
Never once.
because you actually, I was forgot, because this is the first time we're meeting. I forgot that you don't actually live on planet Earth. Yeah. So,
Yes, when couples fight for who's right and who's wrong, it's a losing strategy every single time. And so I try to school them, educate them on, we're not fighting for agreement or alignment. It's this idea of, or no commitment for change, like you said, but just an exchange of thoughts, feelings, and to be heard is the number one goal always.
yes. So we could have you teaching in the United Nations or somewhere else as well, giving that same message. And, in Thailand here, I belong to this one great, you can call it expats club. In fact, that's the name of it, the expat club. And it's so different to go to the expat club and meet all the other foreigners, because all of a sudden there's all these opinions, and a lot of them are pretty different. And a fair amount of the people in the meeting seem to find the most important thing is, I just want to give you my opinion, and then we can go on from there. And it's like, oh, okay, thank you very much for that. And wisdom involves having a broad and balanced perspective that allows a person or group to make high quality, balanced decisions. Wisdom springs from a passionate commitment to the constant process of acknowledging, meaning to me that means also accepting multiple perspectives. And you know, years ago, when I was still living in Japan, and I used to do corporate workshops, and there's a treasure trove of great, great exercises that are out there from written by other consultants and stuff on how to facilitate various meetings in a corporation. And here's what I found out over and over and over again. Let's say it was like one of the famous exercises is called something like the crash in the desert or something like that. So there's 5 or 6 people in a small plane. Somehow the engine breaks down and they're forced to land in the middle of the desert. No one got hurt, thank goodness. But they're 2 or 3 days away from any kind of help if they're going to walk in the desert, and none of them are skilled in the desert. And okay, what are we going to do from here on out then is the exercise. And the members of the group are meant to come up with suggestions. What I found over and over and over again, no matter how much some particular opinionated guy in the group understood nothing about being in the desert and so forth and so on, he would make himself the appointed leader of the group. And people were likely to most often follow his suggestions, no matter how they aren't really the best suggestions. Because this exercise material at the end, they also had suggestions of what would be the best thing to do. And usually, the person that had the most wisdom concerning this issue, and of course, none of these people had ever crashed in a desert before. The person, or sometimes it could be a couple, but usually particularly one person would have by far the most wisdom in this situation, would be number one, it's a woman, and number two, she said very little. And I would, at the end when we're debriefing, I would say to this lady, I hope as a result of this exercise here today, that going forward, you share the wisdom you have, and I'm sure you have it in many different topics, rather than hiding your candle, under the bushel basket, and no one gets the light. So wisdom involves having a broad and balanced perspective. And lots of times, the person that takes themselves to be the leader of this group could easily be a couple, has totally forgotten about this broad and balanced perspective, because who really knows more about this relationship than me, sweetheart? And the other person feels talked down to. So, what thoughts on this topic are some of you guys having, please? How to have a high quality relationship and how to be able to share your very important takes on what needs to be discussed. What's your thoughts? Wow, pretty profound, huh? And by the way, Vaughn, and I really mean this honestly, even though I can't see you fully, maybe that's it. But you look younger today than when I was meeting you before.
Well, that's because I'm in love.
Your beard's a good deal shorter.
Call him Benjamin Button.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Great guy.
Thank you for that. It's interesting you mentioned that exercise. I was asked to do that once with a bunch of state employees who work in the mental health field, and we had the same model, but it was a plane crash in Alaska in the dead of winter.
Okay. Doesn't matter,
And
by the way.
yeah, no, I know it's a hard situation, and then there was really no good answer, the way the exercise was set up. But yeah, the way people processed it was very interesting. I agree. The most confident responder was usually the least informed, and the wisdom of listening, and also like the idea of like, are you just going to march off by yourself, or are you going to stay together? Wasn't a paradigm that was like dictated by the exercise facilitator, and that kind of came up later. Like, do we send a scout and see if they could help and come back, or do we all stay together? And I thought that was one of the really interesting pieces of it. But
Yeah. And
yeah.
if you were one of the people out there, or I was one of the people out there, I mean, there's no magic wand. And it's going to be a very challenging situation, perhaps even challenging enough to where one or two people die. But we're just trying to come up, hopefully, having never been in this kind of situation before, hopefully come up with the best decision. And I think it would be very rare, in my opinion, just in my opinion, and welcome other opinions here. I think it would be very rare that one person could strongly lead this, one person in the group responding to this exercise for the first time could take the lead and really say, well, what we should do is X, Y, and Z, and the group winds up doing X, Y, and Z. And I have tended to be a good person in emergencies in my life, but wow, I would never put myself forth as the person that most likely has the best ideas starting out. And it's my opinion, I say opinion, accent the word opinion just to say not the truth, is I always feel a bit of sadness when I'm out in a group, and will often be with people that I don't know all that well. And there's two people in the group, and I immediately go, oh, these two are married for sure. How do I know that? It'll often be this way, but it can be both ways. How do I know? How am I pretty sure that they're married? Wow, the wife seems so annoyed with the husband's social habits. Wipe your face, she says to the husband, who has like 1 grain of rice over here, or use your fork instead of your spoon, or and the person says it with annoyance in their voice. And I often think, as not being a couples therapist, but I often think, wow, got to be challenging living in a relationship like that. Here we are, just sitting around having a couple of drinks, eating some food, and my partner is annoyed with me. My God, I didn't even hardly speak tonight. And she's annoyed with me. So most of us find it very easy to have judgments about the habits and beliefs of other people. And interestingly enough, it's kind of like, well, you know, Joel, now that I know you better, I want to tell you a bunch of stuff that normally I don't tell anybody. But, and then you read this other person, what I call the riot act. You know, if you weren't so X, and if you were more Y, and ba 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 ba. And one of the things we're really forgetting at those times, I think, is I'm wondering what my counterpart feels about me. And if I understood more about what my counterpart feels about me, lovely guy that I am, I'll understand more about my counterpart, which is most likely crucially important. And chances are I'll understand more about me as well. Joseph George, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm heard. Am I audible? Yeah,
Yes, I can hear you.
thank you. Yeah. Uh, Interestingly, the last session, the question was, who are you? And if you've seen Charlie take a deep breath in between, is to go down into oneself and feel for that sense of identity.
Feel for
And
that sense of identity. Yes,
that's right.
go ahead.
Now, I'd say there's something fundamental there in that when we feel for ourselves, we know we're inseparable from the rest of us, not only as a species, that we are interconnected. And in that sense, what we're doing today is more like how do we feel in the relationship? Because without being fully present to oneself, I, for one, for example, I realize that love is an act of giving more than receiving. So we give from the fullest sense of who we are. And therefore, for relationships to occur, even if it be in a decision-making moment like, the desert exercise, it would be about calibrating oneself with the others in the situation. And therefore, the wisdom is also about uh, how do I come across so that I can be of use more accurately with those around me. And these are thoughts that were coming in me and thought I should express myself. And I come from that place because I think for me, coming into today's session, it was about, so I have so much to give, but is the other person willing to receive? And if the person out there is not showing any signs of wanting to receive, then how do I hold a peace? So I look out the window, I see clouds. It's like, when does the cloud decide when to rain? And when does it hold itself back? Yeah, that's my piece. Over to you, Charlie.
And you'll be answering the question about the clouds at some point? That would be a very fascinating piece of information to have. So, my good friend Joseph here, who I've known for a number of years, who happens to be Indian person and living in India, although he's quite an international person, there's a number of wonderful things said by Joseph, for sure. And there's a flavor of coming from Indian culture strongly imbued in what he was saying also. And that's one of the really important things about intercultural communication. And I often think that couples communication is also intercultural communication. Coming from this different culture than me, it seems to me that you think X, and I'm wondering if I'm correct on that. But that, particularly in the Western world, I think we tend to come from a place of right and wrong. Kind of like, Carol, you're a nice person. I just wish that you weren't so X. Oh, let me see. How can I change that? Wow, what do you think this? I mean, I've heard people say that. I wish you weren't so X. It's like, and what do you expect your counterpart to say in a situation like that?
I'm not like that.
Yes. Men always talk to me like that. So, yes, Joseph knows me well. So when I pause, I usually take a deep breath because a body that has a good amount of oxygen is a body that tends to have more wisdom than a body or a person that doesn't have enough oxygen in their system. And this oxygen that I have, even though I'm in a very different location than everybody else in this room, this oxygen that I'm sharing with the universe, I'm somehow also sharing with each and every one of you. And we used to do an exercise in Aikido class in Japan with just doing breathing in and out through the nose. So there's not going to be any sound. And with your eyes closed. And maybe you feel like you know the teacher a bit because you've been coming to his classes for a number of years. After just 1 minute even, or 2 minutes, or certainly 5 minutes of breathing with your eyes closed, pretty much everybody in the room is out of sync with the breathing of the sensei. And what you can notice when a group's communication and interaction is really going super well is people are tending to breathe along with each other, particularly taking in a breath. And so the question becomes, here I am talking to this person, and as I was more or less expecting, we don't agree on this topic. But what's my intent going to be from there? And I have found over the years, as much as I fought against knowing this, I have found over the years that it's very rare, even with a skilled communicator like me, it's very rare that one person changes the other person's opinion in the course of a conversation. Now, is that just my poor communication skills, or do you people have a similar experience?
I can say that that is my experience. And what I generally hope that I'm wise enough in the moment to realize that the opportunity is to learn,
To learn.
just to learn from the other person expressing themselves. Learn whatever is there to learn.
Yes.
Not
Yes. And
to
yeah.
learn, not trying to pick apart and think about how to oppose them on a point, but rather just to feel, actually to feel them.
Oh, excellent. Yes. Oppose them or educate them. Yeah, Joseph.
Oh no, that was just
That was a
a
mistake.
gesture. No, it was a clap for what she said. Thank you,
Okay.
Connie.
Okay. Does anyone here have an experience of being able to change other people's opinions in the course of a conversation? So I'll take that as a no, since no one's responding, if that's okay.
Charlie,
Yes, Sherry.
something that occurs to me is in order, I'm going to tag on to Connie and Joseph, but in order just to be with to be the receiver, to the learn, to be present, and hear what the other person is saying. It occurs to me that for most human beings, an automatic thing is, well, I hear what you're saying, but I think you're wrong. They may not even say it out loud. Their face may not express it, but in the back of their head is this, I'm an enlightened soul, so I will listen to you. And invariably, there's a part of ourselves that either we move towards someone or we back away from someone based on many factors. The way we say things, words that we use, attitude, eye contact, or anything. But as human beings, there's and I'm going to just say in this group, because I don't know everyone, but I'll make it up. When we see ourselves as better than the other person, the enlightened one, because I can listen to you, I will hear you, I will be present to you. I find still there's an essence, a part of ourselves that will come out and have a judgment, And it's very hard to, the old story about the two priests who walk along. I will say in India, two priests in India, they walk along, they come to a riverbank, and they can't, there's a young girl there, and she can't go across because the water's too hard for her. One of the priests picks her up, carries her across, sets her down, And the two priests continue walking. And one priest said, wait, wait, wait. What are you doing? Don't you, you know, you're not supposed to pick up that girl. And the priest who did pick up the girl said, ah, that was back there. You're still carrying that with you? And, you know, it's just thinking about who we are as human beings at different points where we can listen. I can listen to some people very easily for a long time, and there are other people I'm pretending to listen because it's important for that relationship to be available, just to be available. I don't have to like them or dislike them, but I'm available and I will hear it. But I still comes back to that essence of being human is always there's a tickle back there that I like you, I don't. I like what you're saying, I don't like what you're saying. I'm interested, I'm not interested. There's always that element. And I'm wondering if that ever goes away. Because it's there. I throw that
Okay.
out for consideration for anyone.
Now, before I respond at all, I'm trying to think like, was there something tickling me or whatever? But I see that Vaughn and Allison seem to be saying yes to what you were saying. So would you guys please give some words to that? You got me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So much yes to all that Sherry said. I love all of that. And to dovetail from there, Vaughn and I were friends for 4 years before we started dating. And we've been sort of exploring the differences between friendship
Exploring
and
what, please?
exploring the differences in our communication style and
Okay.
experience of each other from friendship and romantic partnership. And things become a lot more layered and complicated and emotional and sensitive when it turns romantic because we're most sensitive to each other, right? We spend more time together. That's part of it too. And all of the conversations, there's more, we're creating more depth. And so there's more sensitivity, emotionality, a lot more to navigate and maneuver through. So just as that's generally to kind of state like what we just had a short exchange about. When you're in conversation or relationship with someone and what are the expectations? What are you trying to get out of or not get out of? And how quickly can you exit a conversation or not? You know, if it's an acquaintance or a networking situation, you can quickly exit. But if it's a partner, you're in it. You can't exit and not have the conversation. It's either now or we're both too escalated to have it. So let's shelve it. Let's not ignore it. Come back to it. Let's both take a break, come back in an hour or tomorrow at 7 p.m. But we can't ignore it. We have to have this conversation. Vaughn has children. I do not. I've never dated somebody who has children. So that's a big topic. We can't just not talk about it.
Yes. Yes. You know, I have two quick thoughts. One is years ago, and I mean like when I was in my early 20s, so 50 years ago, I had a very good woman friend who was still a good friend of mine, and we were never lovers. And I mean, we knew each other for years, and we were both sexually active during that period of time and with more than one person. And somehow we both just knew that we weren't meant to be lovers. This lady and I were not meant to be lovers. And it's not because I had any negative take about her in any way, shape, or form. And So she came and visited me in Japan, and in Japanese apartments and stuff, places to live are usually quite small. And anyway, her and I slept on the same double futon for like 2 or 3 weeks. Everyone assumed we were lovers. And and usually, of course, it would be a guy that would say, "Oh, so, you know, your girlfriend's here." I go, "No, well, she's a friend of mine and she's a woman, but she's not my girlfriend in a romantic sense." And they wouldn't believe me. So I found that interesting, that when people see a certain intimacy between two people, they can assume that they have a romantic relationship as well, even though it's not true. And then there's this very, very anecdotal little information I have. I have a girlfriend here in Thailand, and she speaks almost no English at all, which is interesting to have a relationship with a person that doesn't speak almost at all the same language that you do. And my Thai speaking ability, I can order food at a restaurant and so forth and so on, but I can't have a meaningful conversation. And recently, my hair was like about this much longer, and I had to comb it back. And it was time for me to get a haircut, and my girlfriend is actually a professional haircutter. So she has her own shop. And she said, "Oh, do you want your hair cut?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "But nit noi." Nit noi means a little bit. And she took that to mean take it all down to where I have almost nothing, because I just want a little bit left. And I'll have to tell you, when I looked in the mirror, this is only like 4 days ago, and I looked in the mirror after she cut my hair, I was like, "Oh my God, what did you do?" And thank goodness I'm not. Of course, I must be vain to some extent, but I don't really care. And this also looks pretty good, And so not having all that much of a common language, verbal language to speak, sometimes we both misunderstand each other in a way that's a little bit funny, if not hilarious. And I think it's the same thing, actually, that happens for a lot of couples that do have the same native language, that they don't understand what their partner meant when they said "not really," or "no thank you," or let me think about that," and and yes, there's always something that I think pretty much all of us need to always pay attention to, is this thing about being judgmental. And one of the very interesting things about being judgmental is that you'll likely find that you are also judgmental in your internal dialogue about yourself. "Oh shit, there I am doing that again." Or whatever. So the question becomes, as I think Joseph, my friend Joseph, at least hinted at a while ago, is love. And the love you get is equal to the love you give, is what I think John Lennon said.
Hmm.
And the love you get is equal to the love that you give. So that when my daughter, like when I had cancer, my daughter came twice to visit me. And from LA, that's a pretty big trip. It's like 10-hour flight from LA to Tokyo, and about a 7-hour flight from Tokyo to Bangkok, and then an 1.5-hour flight from Bangkok to Chiang Rai, where I live. And she was I mean, I didn't ask her to come. She was very happy to come because she loves me. And she wanted to really get a sense of how I was doing. And I asked this as a question. 1 second, Joseph. Is it's my opinion, and that's only an opinion, and I'm very clear about that. My opinion is that when people get into what we can call romantic relationships, committed relationships, whatever, for a lot of people, not everyone, it also tends to make them more prone to feeling picked on, shall we say, more prone to feel, oh, here she goes again, kind of thing when the partner says whatever the partner says. So that somehow the closeness creates a kind of, in another emotional way, a separation. Joseph, what were you going to say?
Yeah, when you began today, you quoted Bateson to say that knowledge is the intelligence of the system as a whole. I have a small dimension to wisdom that I've been experiencing over the last few years, and it's this. Wisdom is not a static, it's a dynamic in terms of its essence, in that what's true in a moment may not be true in the next. And more importantly, wisdom is the intersection between me wanting to explore the world on my own, even as I'm open to the experience of other people's journeys. What am I learning from them? And when I'm finding myself in that intersection, I'm in the dynamic of wisdom. And that's what I wish to offer because I got a similar experience listening to all participants today. There's so much to be learned.
Yes, yes. I think feeling loved by someone, I think often commonly makes us feel vulnerable at the same time. Kind of like if I found out that Joseph was in Chiang Rai and he hadn't even called me to let me know he was in town. Oh my God, what's going wrong? You know, so some couples, if the husband said he wanted to take a short walk on his own on a Saturday morning, his lady might feel, hey, maybe our relationship isn't as good as I thought. Because if the relationship was really good, he'd want to be with me all the time. And I would jokingly say, I don't even want to be with myself all the time. So I'm wondering, let's do it this way so everybody can either say something if they're comfortable with it or not say anything. Who feels like they learned something today? And maybe no one raises their hand, but if you feel like you learned a little something today, raise your hand, please, so I can see it. Oh, wow. Okay. So, Sherry, what did you learn?
There we go. I'm gently reminded, as Joseph was speaking, I was gently reminded of something I learned a long time ago, and I had forgotten this. But the reason we are in relationship, let's say romantic relationship, it is designed for us to find out who we are and who we are not. Who we are in different ways. And as the dynamic of any relationship, we change depending on the day, the hour, the moment. And that is to help us learn who we truly are and how we can learn to forgive ourselves, because I think part of love is being able to forgive ourselves as we forgive others. And if we have that magic moment of wisdom, consciousness of what just happened, and we can have a conversation with the other person that says, wait a minute, I did X, I just spoke and it came out, and I am so sorry, I apologize, whatever the moment calls for. Or it could be, I love you, and I didn't mean to say it, I said it too soon, who knows? But the wisdom of the moment is being able to recognize consciously that who I am and who I am not, and who, because when I say who I am, I'm already comparing myself to something that is beyond what I am. I want to be whatever, better, perfect, whatever. But in that moment, when I say something in a conversation with someone and I'm rude or inconsiderate or not listening or whatever, and I can catch myself, that is the dynamic of two things happening. Love for myself, that who am I being is not who I want to be in that moment. And the other piece of that is the love I have for the other person is I hope they recognize that in that moment, I was not who I am. And I can be better. I can be a better partner in this relationship. And that takes a lot of work. That is extremely a huge amount of energy and a huge amount of work. And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. And I think part of, back to Joseph again, is that relationship about the wisdom is recognizing and forgiving ourselves, because we can't love others unless we love ourselves. So we have to do the forgiveness. We have to forgive that part of ourselves that didn't quite meet what we would hope to be. So I think the whole conversation around relationship or in conversation with others is it depends whether it's a sexual relationship, a loving relationship, a marital relationship, a friendship, whatever it is. It's in that moment with the conversation with others that we really determine who we are. And I love the part that Joseph said, it's dynamic. It's constantly shifting. And that's how we learn who we are or who we aren't, who we are not. That's it. That's my learning.
Thank you.
I love that, Sherry. And as my supervisor in grad school said, we're works in progress forever, which means individually and as a couple, partnership, or really any dynamic, friendship, works in progress forever. I'll share with you one of I had to sketch it out because I don't have my actual resource cards here, but this is supposed to be a picture of a whale. Looks more like a fish, okay? But whale, WAYL, is the acronym, which stands for What Are You Learning? So this is something I talk with my couples about is when you're in conflict or you're having an exchange that starts to go sideways, can you hit pause and ask for a whale conversation? Which is what you're opting into, which is lowering defensiveness, lowering reactivity, increasing curiosity, increasing empathy. And the sole purpose of the exchange is to listen to understand. So you
Yes.
choose who's speaking first, who's listening first.
Yes.
So if Vaughn's speaker and I'm listening, I am here to then summarize what I understand to be true for Vaughn. And he has to tell me, am I getting it right? Did I miss something? Is there something to be corrected? And only when he feels like he's fully understood do we switch roles. And then I'm the speaker, he's the listener. So it's not this back and forth of, well, let me tell you why I was late to lunch. The hurt is already done, right? I was already late. He felt disrespected, blah, blah, blah. And it's not about, well, let me tell you why. I want to hear all of his experiences, his feelings about feeling disrespected, not prioritized because I was late meeting him for lunch. So giving full validation, empathy for that, and then switching and then I feel heard for why I was late, right? But it's never to contest each other's perspective. It goes back to that understanding each other. We're not fighting to agree, but just to be heard and understood is so important.
Yes, thank you for that. And in the circles of therapists and people in the helping professions, there's this term, Carol uses it a little differently than me. I call it deep listening. Carol calls it active listening. Active listening. I call it deep listening. And what deep listening means for me is only listening. Like what you'll notice, particularly if two people aren't really agreeing with each other, I start to listen to, let's say, Joseph, and I go, oh, and I'm already formulating a response to him, particularly because I don't agree with what he's just been saying. And the other person feels me like, and I have this thing of, are you finished yet? So that I can immediately jump on top of that with a better version of what he just said. And where I find it, what I'm calling deep listening or active listening, when I find it's most impactful in my work, I like to call myself a mentor rather than a coach, because a coach is, there's a lot of people don't really have training in being a coach, or not enough, is when someone says something really quote unquote big to you, like if I'm meeting a female client for the first time And it's funny, I haven't worked with anybody in person for years now because I'm living in Thailand. So, and I work with people from around the world. But if, for instance, a woman says, well, I think maybe I should just start this conversation by saying I was raped 2 years ago. And I do my best to sit there, take a deep breath, and go, okay, well, that's certainly not a nice thing to have happened. For me, I very importantly don't go into, oh, poor Sally. Oh my God, that must have been so horrible. You know, wanting to show I'm commiserating with her or whatever. I think all of that can take us away from what the person really wants and needs. So I say, wow, okay. So that's certainly not a great thing to have had happen. Which is also meant to be a nonverbal suggestion to her. Let's keep it low and slow, as I call it. And let's see what wisdom and healing we can mine together in our relationship. So I want to stop only because I think it's important to more or less stop when I say I'm going to stop, and we're already a couple of minutes past that. But that's my tendency. And so relationships, wisdom, the love you get is equal to the love you give. All of it can be considered quote unquote work. I tend to not think about it like that so much myself, but that could be my weakness, actually, one of my many weaknesses, actually. I've enjoyed being here with you all today. Some of whom, one or two of you, I'll talk to soon. Others of you, I would hope, maybe, Vaughn and Allison, most likely I'm having another class in 2 weeks. If I am, Vaughn will get an email letting you know about that. And classes are meant as a way for us to share. Like Joseph certainly said some great things. Sherry did, Vaughn, actually, Connie a little bit. Because I don't want to be the one leading the desert survival exercise. And everyone's saying, oh, Charlie seems to think he knows more than everybody else about this topic. So thank you very much. And keep in touch in whatever way you like. And Joel, as always, I don't thank Joel at the end of every class, but anyway, I'm always thanking Joel for helping me set up and organize these classes. Been doing it for years. Thank you, my friend.
Happy to do it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Charlie, once again.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank
Thank
you.
Bye.
Thanks, group.
Bye.